ranch country, and we're a very isolated area.
I'm married to a rancher, and he's the fourth generation to live on that ranch. Before there was a grocery store here, people drove a minimum of 42 miles to a grocery store. When I moved to town, we had been without a grocery store for 10 years. When you're in rural America, sometimes it is hard to survive, but this community has just always made the stand that we will be here, we will survive, we will keep our bank, we will keep our school.
Their feeling is that if a community is going to stay alive, it has to have three things: a school, a store, and a bank, and the store kind of rounded out that feeling.
We've had teachers apply to work here, and when they saw there was no grocery store, they just went away.
So it's always been in the back of everybody's mind, that'd be nice to have the grocery store again.
It actually started as a brainstorming session, I understand, in the school.
The topic was, we have a really good school system, but we're losing students. And we got to visiting, and Stacy said, well, she had people that lived out in her neighborhood that really would like to come to this school, but it didn't make sense for them to come here and then have to turn around after school and drive to another town, another time zone to get their groceries. And so Stacy and I just laughed, and I said, well, she said, we're just gonna have to build the grocery store, I guess. And we laughed and looked at each other and said, yeah, I think we're gonna have to build a grocery store.
When we talked about other grocery stores being in Cody, I don't think a real grocery store could survive. I think the profit margin is too slim.
The store couldn't survive if there wasn't a lot of what I would call volunteer labor.
During the day, they don't get paid. It's a class. It's a work-based learning class. But in the evenings, after school, weekends, summers, then we pay them.
We were invited to go speak at a conference, and when I looked at the flyer, it said Social Enterprise Conference, and I thought, I don't even know what social enterprise is. I don't know why we're going, but okay, they want to hear our story, we'll tell our story. So I listened to the keynote speaker, and I actually got goosebumps. A social enterprise is a business whose primary purpose is the common good. Our primary purpose is to serve our community and to educate our students. And when you look at the social enterprise model, it's a government agency, the school, and a nonprofit, and then creating a business, which is the Circle C Market. Nobody is making money on this store. It's going into an account to keep the store going.
Adults don't necessarily trust kids. I'm thinking of a nice way to put this. And so one of the real battles first coming here was to convince people to let this be truly a student-run store. It was kind of billed as that, but then when you come right down to it and say, okay, we've got a store with a significant amount of inventory in it, it's important for the community. Are we really sure that we want to turn it over to students?
The students were involved with every aspect of building this store.
I've learned lots of different business skills and skills of working with people and working with other businesses.
My role at the store is bank reconciliation. I have learned QuickBooks already, and I want to be a CPA when I get older. It's just really helped me.
We have students that clean, have students that we're showing them how to do the maintenance. One student who is in charge of the produce. Students do all the pricing, all the ordering. They stock, they run the cash register.
We make decisions based on money, $50,000, $100,000, which is something I never thought I'd ever be part of.
And then it has really taught many of them to deal with people in general.
I was terrified of talking on the phone until I started helping with the grocery store, and it just really gets you out of your comfort zone and helps teach you life skills that you'll need.
I used to be really shy and everything and never really did public speaking or interviews like this.
I'm just a lot better around people, I think, solving problems with people without offending them.
If I could tell every high school kid in America something, I would say,
You're capable of so much more than you think you are. you just have to grab the bull by the horns.
Never to take the first no, because they were told a lot of no's and they had to push through a lot of things to get this.
Dream bigger than you're dreaming.
I'm a big dreamer. I've always have been, ever since I was little. Big dreams. And I think that's a key to starting anywhere. Like, we did it in Cody, Nebraska. I think you can do it just about anywhere you want to.
This issue about losing your supermarket actually is a deeper issue about justice for many people. If you don't have a place to buy healthy food, it makes you feel like you've been forgotten.
I strongly believe in ideas and the power of them. Here's an idea that I talked about that wound up going to the White House and became a part of national policy.
So the Pennsylvania Fresh Food Financing Initiative started really out of something simple called a farmer's market. Come winter, the farmer's market was going to close, and a number of residents started talking about the fact that they didn't have supermarkets nearby. And it really prompted more deep thought on the part of the Food Trust as to why these supermarkets weren't there anymore. Where did they go? Not only did we look at where the supermarkets were and where the people were, but eventually we looked at where the disease rates were the highest. So where are people suffering from the highest rates of what we call diet-related disease? When you isolated that, where disease was highest and where people were of lowest income and where there were no supermarkets, that's really where we started to get people interested in having a focused conversation. A state representative by the name of Dwight Evans, he himself had been a resident, grown up in Philadelphia, and could relate to this problem. He could reflect on the fact that it did seem like there were quite a few areas that were missing supermarkets that should have them. Then he started to look at this issue as a state, because as a state representative, he can't just be responsible for, fixing the ills of Philadelphia. He's really responsible for helping people across the state.
As the chairman of the Appropriation Committee, you have an awful lot of influence and power. When we were at the negotiating table, this was my priority. And it was something that I felt very strongly about, first. And secondly, I chose not to do this in legislation. It was a line item that I used in the state's budget as a way to meet the objective. It was $10 million in 04, $10 million in 05, and $10 million in 06.
The state gave that initial $30 million. It was leveraged. So the reinvestment fund matched it, actually in the end 3-to-1, so it turned out to be $120 million. And then they actually in the end also brought some additional funds to the table to get to around $190 million that they could sort of attribute to this project.
The number of projects that were created was 88 projects in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and 5,000 jobs.
So it could go toward a refrigerator, it could go toward fixing the outside, or it could be a massive new store being built from the ground up.
But it also had the spin-off effect. The supermarket was the anchor, but there was indirect effect.
In the case of Progress Plaza, a large movie theater went in across the street once the supermarket came there. New other stores, banks, hair salons, other kinds of places that then, sort of revitalize a corridor.
This idea was ultimately duplicated by the national government and put in the Farm Bill, which they passed, and other states, like 17 other states, duplicated the concept that we had designed here in Pennsylvania.
Last summer in New York City alone, there were 140 farmers markets operating within the city 5 boroughs. That's a lot of farmers markets. My name is Maritza Owens. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Harvest Home. Harvest Home is a nonprofit located here in New York City. We've been around for 7 years as a nonprofit, but for 22 years as an organization, developing farmers markets in low-income neighborhoods. This summer, we'll be operating 19 farmers markets. We're in 4 of the 5 boroughs of the city, and we serve about 250,000 customers a year. Having people become ill as a result of eating bad food is putting a strain on our medical system. Most of the communities that we serve, because they're low income, there's a high incidence of diabetes, hypertension, and chronic illness, the prescription for which is healthy eating. What we're really trying to achieve is in areas where there are supermarkets, but the quality of produce is not good, being able to provide the residents with a place that they can go, that they can have access to the same quality of food that anyone else outside of their community has access to on a regular basis. Many of the customers that come to our markets are immigrants. They come from Central America, Africa, and so we've learned that by having cooking demonstrations at the market that exposes them to how to use the produce that they're seeing at the market, it's a win-win for them and it's a win-win for the farmers. Right now we're in the Bronx. We're at the Mount Eden Market. This market has been here now about 15 years. It took about 3 years for this market to really take off. So this market is doing so well that we're now doing it 2 days a week.
My name is Joe Morgevich. I'm a 4th generation produce farmer in the Black Dirt country of Orange County, New York. We operate 10 markets a week. We've been doing farm markets since 1997. Our very first farm market was with Maritza and Harvest Home Markets, a market that we still do today. It's called the Mount Eden Market. It's off of the Grand Concourse near the Bronx-Lebanon Hospital.
Morgevich Produce is one of the farms that's been an anchor farmer at this market. I grew up with them, my children grew up with them. I know their family, they know my family. It's 3 brothers that run the farm. They just rolled up their sleeves and decided to work with us and made this market what it is. In our markets, there's not a lot of cash because people are primarily on food subsidies. So that's really the engine that drives these markets. Elected officials now have started a rally around supporting the markets because they are seeing the benefit to their constituents. In 2009, the Department of Health came out with this new incentive program for SNAP that for every $5 that you spend at the market with your SNAP, you will get an additional $2 coupon, and that mechanism was to promote and incentivize people really coming to the market to use their food stamps. And that program has been very successful.
Regardless if it's coupon or it's EBT or it's health bucks or it's cash, I view it all as the same. So I try to take an egalitarian stance for it because it is all the same for me. So we're hitting more areas that want quality produce and don't want to travel great distances to get it. Or they don't have supermarkets in their neighborhoods.
Doing farmers markets 14 years ago was not as popular as it is today. So we didn't have the level of support 14 years ago that we do today. So yes, everybody was skeptical because again, I'm in a low-income neighborhood. People didn't expect that people would come at this level that we have here. So we proved them wrong. I love that.
One thing that I've noticed throughout is that people don't know how to properly feed themselves. Either at worst, they outsource it to a restaurant, or at best, they follow some fad diet advice they found in a magazine.
If you're not cooking at home, it's really difficult to eat healthfully and on a budget. I mean, it's almost, you can eat on a budget if you cook at home, but to eat on a budget and to eat out, I mean, food at restaurants or to-go places costs a lot of money. The Happy Kitchen started in the late 90s, and we were running farm stands at the time and in a lot of low-income neighborhoods. And kind of the idea came to somebody that, you know, we should really have a complementing program to the farmers market or farm stands of teaching people how to consume and how to eat and cook, you know, a lot of the vegetables. What we ultimately landed on for the free 6-week series is, and that's kind of the basis of the program, is training people from the community to be facilitators, what we call them, and they're basically like peer health educators, essentially. And so they're people from the community, and they don't necessarily have a nutrition background or even a culinary background, but they have an interest in healthy cooking and healthy eating and serving their community. So now we have about 43 facilitators.
I'm Jacqueline Broadnax. I'm a facilitator with the Sustainable Food Center, the Happy Kitchen program. I've been a facilitator in the program for nearly 5 years. I wanted to eat more healthy for my kids and wanted them to eat more vegetables. That's how I initially got started. We're in Texas, and you know, a lot of the health issues are here.
I have always had struggled with my weight, and one of the things that I knew would change that would be if I started eating healthier, and that was a better way for me to set an example for my kids.
I got into this program because my mom told me that it's an opportunity to help her cook, and I think that it's really interesting because there's so many younger people, and I didn't think that they would be like super interested in cooking.
And I expected it to be like this serious class where people were like, okay, you need to do this, this, and this, and this, and if you do anything out of line, you're like kicked out or something. But instead, it's like this really happy-go-lucky class, and it's really interesting, and I just appreciate it a lot.
So I'm gonna hand out a few of these salt tubes, and I just want you guys to actually read what some of these things are. Now, I don't know how many of you guys eat ham, but this is how much salt is in 3 ounces of ham. I don't know if you have 3 ounces of ham or maybe more. I don't know if you eat that serving size.
We went over how much sodium is in ramen, and I used to eat like a ramen a day, and I'm addicted to ramen, but like it teaches me a lot because I know I shouldn't be eating so much sodium, and I shouldn't be eating a lot of these things that are gonna affect me in the future.
We usually have resistance from participants, usually somewhere in the series, but usually by the end of the series, we can see a change. They look at it thinking it's about food, and it ends up being about their health and being a personal journey, because then they begin to realize how the sugar, the sodium, the fat affects them personally.
A lot of times people will, think that eating healthy is really costly. They'll spend more money on clothing or jewelry or cars instead of what they're putting in their bodies, and I think that's a lot more important.
My goal with the Happy Kitchen is really to teach people how to cook, to show them that they can eat healthy on a budget, and that it's not that intimidating.
I think we've kind of relegated all cooking to be from star chefs or people that learned cooking, and it's kind of almost like you couldn't know anything about history unless you had a history degree.
Hello there. Hello. How are you doing?
Good.
Good. I'm so glad you're here. So we're following up on the constipation and the stomach pain today. Yes. I saw you brought me your food journal. One of the most common reasons for abdominal pain in a young child is constipation, and I seem to be seeing that more and more. And a lot of that, I think, is because of the diet. So the kids are eating this kid-friendly, average American diet, which is very refined, very much fiberless sort of a diet. So many kids that I talk to, they don't have a bowel movement every day, and they really are struggling to have a bowel movement. 10 years ago, I probably would have just given these kids a laxative and told them, you know, good luck. But what I'm seeing though is you really aren't fixing the problem when you do that. So I thought, gosh, I've just got to be able to spend more time with these families, teaching them how to start from scratch in the kitchen, what to have in their kitchen, what to have in their pantry, what tools they needed to be able to cook a good meal for their families. Show me again where your belly hurts, sweetheart. Right there. Feels nice and soft today, though.
I hope that it is just her diet, because that's much easier to change.
Yeah.
And better than having to give her medicine.
If we can avoid giving medicine, why not, you know? So we envisioned having this practice which incorporated a kitchen, which incorporated a teaching garden, and had a decor that would reflect health and wellness and inspire families. And so we opened Yum Pediatrics this year. Under one roof, you'll find my practice, but you'll also find the big teaching kitchen here, where we teach our nonprofit classes, but also I very often will bring my patients into the kitchen and I'll show them things that we're making. We'll expose them to foods in the kitchen, maybe after their visit with me in the pediatric side. In these big group practices, you're really forced to see so many patients, and I've been really surprised to see how little patients I have to see to be able to sustain a practice. And it's lovely because I can spend more time counseling on prevention. I'd rather do that than see them sick. And my goal is to have a practice full of kids that really don't need me that much. You know, they may come in for their well visits, but most of the time they're seeing me on this side because they're learning to cook and eat healthy. I don't really necessarily want to see them on that side that much. If I'm doing my job well on this side, I won't have to see them on that side as much. I just need to have a much bigger practice, I guess, to sustain this whole thing.
I am a product of an at-risk family. I know hunger far more intimately than I care to discuss. And I made a commitment years ago that no child would be hungry in my district. So Riverside is the 15th largest school district in the state of California. We have 43,000 students and 47 schools. We prepare 34,000 meals a day, and the bulk of them come out of this facility. The experts tell us that if we do nothing, 1 in 3 children will contract diabetes in their lifetime. And if you happen to be African American, a Latino, or American Indian, it's 1 in 2. That's unacceptable to me. When by diet alone, we can change most of that. 68% of our kids come from at-risk families. Some of them get on the bus in the morning at 6 o'clock and don't get home until 6 or 7 in the evening, and they're going home to an uncertain future. So as the food service director, I'm most committed to ensuring that every kid has access. We can talk about innovation and creativity and all of the new strategies for teaching kids all we want, but if we don't ensure that a child has food in their body to sustain them to learn, then they're going to always be behind.
So when we first went to school districts, we did not get a very friendly reception. That was 9 years ago. But I went to Riverside Unified School District, and there's a guy named Rodney Taylor there, who was the one who got it. So it wasn't the reception of, we already have a vendor. It was the reception of, I've been looking for somebody like you. It's about time. And it was just a great feeling for us because it was a validation of all of our hopes and dreams. And he has been one of the pillars and founders of this whole Farm to School movement.
Farm to School in 1997 was the Santa Monica Malibu School District. It was 3 farmers in South Florida and a school district in Vermont. 3. Today, it's in all 50 states in over 2,000 school districts. 2 years ago, we committed to only serving fresh fruits and vegetables to children. So there's no canned fruits, there's no frozen, it's all fresh. Even on our snacks, we feature locally grown produce. Everything that we do in this school district in the nutrition program is designed around fresh food. So when you ask, how do you get kids to consume it, when that's all they've ever seen, when they come into kindergarten and all they've ever seen is fresh produce, you get used to eating it. And it's going to make a whole generation of children healthier. How do we educate the whole child? I think it's great that little Johnny is going to leave the 12th grade as a straight A student. I think it's a tragedy if we haven't taught him to be a lifelong healthy eater. Johnny might be the smartest kid that dies of a heart attack at 35. In 2005, when we started the Farmers Market Salad Bar here in Riverside, we had 3 farmers. We spent $10,000, and I told you that last year we spent $450,000 on 9 farmers.
When we started this was a little bit out of desperation because we really needed to find some way of improving the financials of our ranch. And so we found a few friendly school districts, and I never imagined that what we were on was the cusp of this huge wave across the country that's called the local food movement.
The bulk of the produce that we receive today from farmers comes through Bob Knight. Informally, he developed a hub with other farmers to help them sell their crops, crops that would go to waste. And probably now more formally, he has a hub. And now I can call Bob not just for his citrus or his kiwi, we call Bob for anything we want.
Our customers, they don't want to have to keep track of 30 different growers and what their growing schedule is and what they grow and how available it is. So if the farmers, we can act together and do all the complicated stuff about crop scheduling and all that stuff, do that behind the scenes and just provide a nice, simple, clean interface to these school customers, then that makes it a win-win. And that's what a hub is. And it's basically these growers, 33 growers, working together. We share a common picking team, we share a common packing team, we share our delivery trucks, and we also share what we grow. These trees were planted like when your great-grandparents were alive, and they've been producing for years and years and years. And a little known fact about oranges is that the older the tree, the smaller the orange. The older the tree, the sweeter the orange, but then it also gets smaller. And so if we tried to sell these in the global market to supermarkets, they don't want a small orange. And so in this area, in the Redlands, Riverside, Southern California area, most of the trees that we have are more than 100 years old. And so they're small oranges. And so this area was really struggling. What are we going to do with our oranges? They're so hard to sell. And so we said, well, who eats small oranges? Kids eat small oranges. So I went to a couple school districts and I sold every single orange that we grew. And they said, yeah, we need more of this. And so I went to my neighbor and I said, do you want in on this? And they said, yeah, sure, because we're just not making it. And so neighbor after neighbor and school district after school district, now we sell to 23 different school districts, which is about 1.5 million kids. And we have 33 farmers that are part of this.
So I see my job is to tell others the story of what's happening here and how it can be done in other places.
6 years ago, I came to Claremont. The program was deemed unsuccessful, unparticipatory. Everything was processed, everything came out of a can. I really wanted to get something more local. So I reached out to a farmer named Bob Knight, and he guided me to a lot of different choices that I could get that were fresh, local, organic. It would decrease the carbon footprint by coming from local sources. I'd be supporting local farmers. Within 20 miles, I could basically buy 100% of my fruit. I'd say about half of our vegetables come from a local source within 20 miles.
What's kind of special about school districts is there's one person who decides for 12,000 people or 20,000 people, or even our biggest customer has 630,000 eaters. One person decides that.
We introduced fruits, melons, crab apples, kiwi fruit, things that some kids had never seen in their life, and it took off. We went from just under 300,000 meals a year to just under 800,000 meals a year. Salad to them actually used to be iceberg lettuce, ranch dressing, and croutons. So when we introduced mixed greens and green leaf lettuces, a lot of them say, well, this is weeds and it's going to taste terrible. Sure enough, in a very short amount of time, the kids took to it.
When you look at school food service and you talk about the possibilities, when you talk about what can and can't be done, the limitations are here. 10 years from now, you're not going to have these kinds of conversations, and we shouldn't be having them now. It shouldn't be a big deal that we're buying locally grown food.
There's definitely a need to support having access to healthy food, right, through a new supermarket with education about, what it means to cook this food. It's a great opportunity to marry the nutrition education with the food access.
Cooking and being well is one of the most important lessons we can teach our kids.
There is no silver bullet. So kind of all of us across the city of Austin, across Texas, across the nation, we're all working on a piece of it.
It doesn't take a lot of people, and they don't have to be important people. They can just be regular people to make a really big difference in a community.
I'm hoping that because I'm part of this movement, I can have some sort of lasting impact.
Because our ultimate goal here is to help build a more sustainable food system and having more democracy and more participation in that food system.
And it's really an opportunity for all of us that all of us can participate in, because all of us eat, all of us have the decision on what we eat and where we get it.
It's not a trend, it's not a fad, it's here to stay. We're transforming food not only in schools, but we're transforming food in America.
in ranch country, and we're a very isolated area.
I'm married to a rancher, and he's the 4th generation to live on that ranch. Before there was a grocery store here, people drove a minimum of 42 miles to a grocery store. When I moved to town, we had been without a grocery store for 10 years. When you're in rural America, sometimes it is hard to survive, but this community has just always made the stand that we will be here, we will survive, we will keep our bank, we will keep our school.
Their feeling is that if a community is going to stay alive, it has to have 3 things: a school, a store, and a bank, and the store kind of rounded out that feeling.
We've had teachers apply to work here, and when they saw there was no grocery store, they just went away.
So it's always been in the back of everybody's mind, that'd be nice to have the grocery store again.
It actually started as a brainstorming session, I understand, in the school.
The topic was, we have a really good school system, but we're losing students. And we got to visiting, and Stacy said, well, she had people that lived out in her neighborhood that really would like to come to this school, but it didn't make sense for them to come here and then have to turn around after school and drive to another town, another time zone to get their groceries. And so Stacy and I just laughed, and I said, well, she said, we're just gonna have to build the grocery store, I guess. And we laughed and looked at each other and said, yeah, I think we're gonna have to build a grocery store.
When we talked about other grocery stores being in Cody, I don't think a real grocery store could survive. I think the profit margin is too slim.
The store couldn't survive if there wasn't a lot of what I would call volunteer labor.
During the day, they don't get paid. It's a class. It's a work-based learning class. But in the evenings, after school, weekends, summers, then we pay them.
We were invited to go speak at a conference, and when I looked at the flyer, it said Social Enterprise Conference, and I thought, I don't even know what social enterprise is. I don't know why we're going, but okay, they want to hear our story, we'll tell our story. So I listened to the keynote speaker, and I actually got goosebumps. A social enterprise is a business whose primary purpose is the common